Matra sparsa tu konteya, sitosno sukha dukkada, agama paino nityas, tamsa titikshavarata. Word by word meaning. Matra sparsa, sensory perception. Tu, only. Konteya, O son of Kunti. Sita, winter. Usna, summer. Sukha, happiness. Dukkha, and pain. Da, giving. Agama, appearing. Apaina, disappearing. Anitya, non-permanent. Tan, all of them. Titiksha, just try to tolerate. Bharata, O descendant of the Bharata dynasty. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his birth early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January to February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles do not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman doesn't hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principles of Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya, illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and one to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of pure discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapada Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padai Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakha Vitamcha हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very powerful verse. Matra sparsatu konteya sitoshna sukha dukkhada agama paino nityas. So if for some reason there is any challenges with the audio, please let me know, and I'll be able to adjust. So this verse is spoken after another set of two powerful couplets, 2.12 and 2.13. In 2.12, Krishna spoke about, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all the kings, nor the future shall any of us cease to be. Natva evam jatunasam natum nema janadhipa nacheva vaibhishama sarvavai ataparam. That means Krishna in this verse 2.1 to 2 days back is talking about is a, a, a thing which had existed all the time, and he is actually referring to jiva, or the soul. The soul transmigrates from one body to another, and here, based on your karmic reactions, the karma you do in this life, you take a birth based on your karmic reactions, in where the soul transmigrates from one body to another. So in 2.12, Krishna is talking about at the platform of soul. And then gradually in 2.13, Krishna is speaking about dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara prapte dhira satrana muhyanti. That means as the embodied soul continuously passes in his body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes from another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such change. So here 2.13, transcending from soul, Krishna is talking about the body. So body as in this body changes forms from boyhood to youth to old age, and the soul similarly passes from one body to another. So here Krishna is going from soul to body, which is the sequencing, and Krishna is very intelligent in explaining to Arjuna. So now in 2.14, Krishna is talking about matrasparsatu konteya sitoshna sukha dukkhada. That means here he has gone beyond soul and body, and now he is explaining about the effect of time or kala on our day-to-day lives in this prakriti, in this nature. So first, as you know, Bhagavad Gita comprises of 5 things: Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, Karma. Ishvara means God, Jiva means spirit soul, which is 2.12, and Prakriti, material nature, Kala, time, and Karma, activity. So in 2.14, Krishna is transcending from soul in 2.12 to body, to what happens within the body in terms of as time progresses, as the kala or the time takes an effect on you. So the kala dimension, out of the 5 things, Krishna is focusing on these 3 very bright topics out of the 5 topics which is explained in Bhagavad Gita. The 3 of the topics being soul, then kala and prakriti. So here matrasparsa. So what happens when Krishna is referring to matrasparsa? What does it mean actually? And he's referring to Arjuna as Kaunteya, and he's saying, as you lead your life at the time of different phases within the life, like the seasons, like the winter season, Sitosna. Sita means winter season. Usna means summer season. Like the changing seasons, the happiness and unhappiness, Sukha Dukkha, comes and it changes. And then he talks about Agama Pahino Nityas. And we'll be focusing on Matrasparsa, we'll be focusing on Agama Pahino. And then at the end he says, Tam Satikshava Bharata. So we'll be focusing on these 3 things which he focused by transcending from soul to body, to what happens in this prakriti, in this sansar, in this day-to-day life. So matra sparsa. So matra means an ability to measure. So whenever you make a cooking or something and you give certain items in this matra, right, in this quantity, and then to add to this matra, Krishna is saying sparsa. Sparsa is nothing but the objectification of the senses. So when we talk about our 5 senses, and then we talk about the objectification of the 5 senses, the objectification in the form of say for example your sense of sight, And your sense of sight always tries to look at a good object, a beautiful object. So the objectification is the object in this example, like a nice photograph, nice hill station, and the eye is the senses. So matra sparsa means the nature tries to provide quantification in terms of matra, in terms of good and bad. Whenever there is anything we do, our mind craves to a situation where we can derive utmost pleasure, which is called sukha prapti, and always tries to run away from dukkha nibriti. That means go away from the sadness. And this measurement of this matra in terms of, if you give the sadness into the negative x-axis and the happiness in the positive x-axis, this matra sparsa is an ability for the mind to quantify the objectification. And there, this matra sparsa is also referred in Srimad Bhagavatam between the conversation between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. And this matra sparsa is referred as, it is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to the desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat, the constant chanting of the transcendental activity of personality of Godhead. So there, here also you see Srimad Bhagavatam 1.6.34, there is reference to matra sparsa, and then it ends with ichha, ach. So the quantification of the objectification is matra sparsa, and then there is that desire, the ichha, which is, so this matra sparsa is very critical. When Krishna is saying matra sparsa, we need to recognize what he meant when human beings, we try to quantify and we measure the happiness and unhappiness in our mind. And then Krishna speaks about agama payino. Agama payino is the desire is manifesting and unmanifesting. And there is reference to ichha dvesa samuthena. So there he is referring to this aspect of desire, how the desire is manifesting and unmanifesting. So in the last reflection, and then he starts to use the word titikshava, that means tolerate or endure. And there, when we talk about tolerate and endure, we always think about Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroropi Sahisnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. One can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree devoid of all senses of false prestige and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of Lord constantly from Sistastakam. So here, the desire. So when you think about an objectification of something, say for example, we have a beautiful thing. The beautiful thing by itself is not good enough. Even if you have the eye, the sense organ, which is objectifying the beauty, having both of this is not enough. And that is where the desire comes in. The desire of looking at it, your ability to desire something through the eye is critical, where you want to appreciate a beauty. For example, if there is tongue, you need to have the desire to taste something tasty through this objectification of sense called ras, to have that appreciation. Likewise, if you have a nose, then you need to have an objectification of the gandha or the pleasant smelling, and you need to have the desire. So the desire comes and goes. Desire manifest and unmanifest. Desire prakat and aprakat. So this manifesting and unmanifesting is what Krishna is focusing here. The organs by itself is not enough. The objectification of the senses is not enough unless we have the desire, and that is exactly what Krishna is focusing on, manifesting and unmanifesting. And then Krishna is going to ear. Then we need some pleasantly hearing things. There are people who come up with veena. There are people who come up with different instruments. So when they come up with different instruments, then the ear desires for those items, those objectification, and this idea of hearing can manifest when we tend to spend some time and hear, and sometimes we don't feel like hearing. That is when it is the desire is unmanifesting. And then we have want to touch something, the skin wants to touch something very soft, and then the desire to be there. So here Krishna is focusing on that desire part. So so here when you think about uh, it is mentioned that this manifesting and unmanifesting in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, that this appearing, right, and disappearing, this winter and summer season, the appearing and disappearing of this happiness and unhappiness. The so nowadays in this world, when everybody is going separate, and it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, that this manifesting and unmanifesting is a thinking process. And the example given in Srimad Bhagavatam is whenever a flame is flickering on a candle light, the flickering is actually getting the oil or ghee and burning itself with the flame, and then the heat goes out, the flame goes out, and then it reignites itself. So, but our eyes, it cannot detect the on and off of this flame. Likewise, whenever there is a river and we see that the river, the water is still, but we do not know whether the molecules of these river is actually right then and there. Some of the molecules may have gone forward, and some other molecules, water molecules, would have come from the back and filled it in. But from our eye, from our viewpoint, it appears that the water is right then and there. So this manifesting and unmanifesting is there in every day-to-day life. Like say, for example, we go to catch a train, we miss the train and we feel sad about it, but we don't know that we should also recognize that there is another train coming, and that train will take us to wherever we want to go in NJ Transit. So this constant, anything which has appeared will eventually, because nothing is permanent in this world, everything is temporary, and every prakriti, every material thing, when it is going to disappear, it's going to mix itself. Like Prabhupada gives the example, if you have a building, the building collapses, for example, the building has come from the soil or earth, but after the building collapses, it's going to come back to earth. And at the same place, you might have seen somewhere around, there are many buildings which are getting created, disappearing. So this cyclic process of good and bad, seasonal thing. Like think about it. When Battle of Kurukshetra was fought, it was fought in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is a place in Haryana, Rajasthan area, where there is, when Bhagavad Gita was spoken during Gita Jayanti in the month of November, December, it was very cold. So Krishna is saying, just like this winter, which is very heavy, and in 3-4 months, this winter is going to go and it's going to be replaced with summer. Likewise, this happiness, unhappiness, this Arjuna's thought process that if I kill these people, if I selectively kill these people and get rid of them from our life, I'll be more happy. And then if I kill my near and dear like Bhishma and Drona, I'll be unhappy. So this selective killing, which was there in the minds of Arjuna, was the point of contention, because this aspect, the Krishna's thought process, that you are not the body, you are the soul. And then, like the body changes, even in our day-to-day life, our cells change very fast. And the only thing which is constant in this entire Prakriti is change. The only constant is change. That's the reason why this Kala, or the time, is such an influence, because people who do not cope up with the time, it's very difficult for them to survive. So it is mentioned that the constant is the change, and that's why you see many generations, they lead their life, and when they get to a senior position, or when the kids come up, they could not cope with the kids because there is a significant generation gap, and both the parties have not spent time in able to detect the change. And then that lack of detection of the change uh, is the cause of so much of quarrel in this world. So in this spiritual world, everybody is progressing towards enjoyment. Everybody wants enjoyment because anandamaya abhyasa, that means the property of human being is is pleasure seeking, right? So here, if you read this verse which Krishna is explaining, he says you have to tolerate this. You have to tolerate. So in 12 point, sorry, in 2.13, Krishna was saying, don't get bewildered by the change. So in 2.13, Krishna explained about the don'ts. The don't bewildered by the change, because change is the only constant. And in 2.14, Krishna is saying tolerate. Okay. So the do's and don'ts. The do means tolerate. 2.14. Don't is don't get bewildered by such a change. 2.13. So Krishna is explaining the do's and don'ts of our lifestyle of in this prakriti, because the do's and don'ts is critical in our spiritual life. It's critical in our family life. We have to change 2.13, and we should not be bewildered by the change, and then we should tolerate. So the question becomes, should we tolerate happiness? And that is where Krishna in this verse is nowhere saying tolerate just sadness or unhappiness. Krishna here is saying tolerate both happiness and unhappiness. So that's the reason why when a devotee with full consciousness, whenever he gets any sadness, he is actually internally happy, because first thing he thinks is this is a prasad of Purna Purushottam Krishna. So I have got this, and if I have got any pious discredit in my bank account through the karmic reaction, by this sadness I am undergoing, I will be able to clear my debt. The decrementation of the pious credits in the event of a sad thing happening to me, after the sadness goes, I'll be done with this loan. So whenever this loan is paid off, think about how much happiness all of us had when you had a loan. When you basically got rid of the loan, you felt as if the 5 kilograms of weight which was in your head has gone. So likewise, when sadness is sunk on a devotee, the devotee is very happy internally. Let all the sadness come. Like Kunti Maharani, when the sadness were coming, he was constantly focused on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna is explaining this to Arjuna. And he, as Prabhupada mentions, he is giving the example of both sides. He is explaining that to Arjuna as Kaunteya, the son of Kunti from the mother's side. And Kunti, as you know, once upon a time she was known as Pritha, and Kunti was given to Kunti Bhoj. Pritha was given to Kunti Bhoj. That's why she became Kunti. And then she had that boon from Durvasa Muni, that she could call out to any demigod and impregnate herself. And after Karna's arrival from the inflamed, burning of the house, inflammable house, the 12-year Vanvas, 1 year incognito, his husband, her husband left, Pandu died, she has to take care of the kids of Madri, Nakul and Sahadev, then this Mahabharata war. Maharani Kunti is filled with how much sadness a person can get. And Krishna is saying to Arjuna, referring as Kaunteya, reminding him that your mother's side took a lot of sadness. Yeah. And then Prabhupada says, he's also referring in this verse to his father's side. Who is the father's side? Bharata. And Bharata, as you know, was 15 generations before Arjuna. And who is Bharata? Bharata was Bharata is actually the son of Dushyanta and Sakuntala, which is actually roughly around 15 generations ahead of Arjuna. So when Bharat, when he basically fought and conquered and got the greater India or Bharatvarsha, King Bharata, and after 15 generations, Arjuna roughly came, he also went through a lot of austerities. He also went through a lot of sadness. So, so Krishna is referring to Arjuna from the mother side and father side as Kaunteya and Bharata. And there is, then there is the references to the do's and don'ts. The do's and don'ts being uh, okay, do's and don'ts is the sober person is not bewildered, namuyati. That means that's a don't. And the sober person has to tolerate and withstand the change. So, so here Krishna is giving the do's and don'ts. So the agama paino in this example is very critical because this appearing and disappearing, the desire manifesting and unmanifesting, is like the flame of the candle, which is coming up, down, up, down. So, and the flow of water is going forward, but from our eyes, we cannot distinguish between that the water is actually flowing. So, and Arjuna was selective in feeling sad and happy after killing some people and not killing some people with whom he cannot lead the life. And he was selective. So, that is where Krishna here is saying you cannot be selective in tolerating unhappiness. You have to tolerate both happiness and unhappiness. That's why in the spiritual mindset, there is no difference between sorrow and happiness because they are part and parcel of Krishna as a remnant, which is prasad. And once we take the happiness and sadness from Krishna as a prasad or a remnant, we will have no difference. I know it's very difficult to recognize. And so Maharani Kunti's example comes all the time. And here Krishna is referring to Arjuna as the Sayana Bharata. And then who can forget about Sita Maya? Sita Maya was the daughter of Rajashri Janak. Very important. Her husband was Maryada Purushottam Ramchandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Her servitor is the all-time top servitor in the world, Hanuman. Still, when Ramji disbanded her to the forest, she was cutting woods from the forest. And when she was growing up, Love and Kush, she was cutting the wood from the forest, cooking in the house, and how much of austerity she went through. And that's the reason why Prabhupada in this purport is explaining that even if it's very cold, we have to take shower because that's the austerity. And even if it is very hot, we have to make sure we cook. We cannot stop cooking because, and that is where the question becomes, whenever you want somebody to tell the time, never ever the time is accurate because somebody will say it is 7:30 to 10 seconds, but by the time you say 7:30 to 10 seconds, 5 seconds have gone by. So the time changes as well. So in an ever changing situation, in an ever changing reflection in our lives, it is just a matter of detecting. And toleration is 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 as the remnant of Krishna. And this toleration has, so the question becomes here, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is telling Arjuna to tolerate. But when Supreme Personality of Godhead can tell Arjuna that I am not going to change this Prakriti because of your liking or disliking, you have to tolerate it, then how come, these, mendicants you see on the streets can predict that you do this and something good is going to happen? So, because the good and bad, the happiness and sadness is purely the karmic reaction. You do something good, it gets added to your pious credits, and you enjoy it, it gets decremented, and like that it works. That's where the karmic reaction has three definitions of karma, vikarma, and akarma. And here, Krishna is not saying, I'll always give you happiness. You are my best friend, I'll give you happiness. He's not saying that. He is saying to Arjuna, tolerate it. The sober person has to tolerate it, titiksha, and withstand the change of happiness and sadness. And the sober person in 2.13 is not bewildered by this change of body from boyhood to old age. So the only change we see is the constant, and there is a lot of suffering. Whenever we talk about Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, whenever a kid is born from the mother womb, she is there for 9 months in a very claustrophobic situation. So when he or she comes out, he or she is very, very happy because that suffering has ended. So he's in a small chamber for several months, very lot of suffering. Janma is full of suffering. Mrityu, when the death comes, it the it is like, several thousands of serpents as if they are biting on you. That is mrityu. Jara, old age, very difficult. And vyadhi, disease, very difficult, lot of suffering. So these things are not going to go away. Suffering and happiness is a detection about your karmic reaction, and the only thing we can do is tolerate in order to spend our time in Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. So likewise it is mentioned that whenever it is a bad time and we are in a situation where everybody is pounding on us, we just have to rely on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is the toleration, titiksha, which Krishna is saying. So, so we need to recognize what is the higher purpose and what is the underlying principle based on which we are going to endure this, and we have to keep our desires to a minimum so that we do not get entangled by the attachment. So just want to summarize in a few seconds. Matras per se, the mind has the tendency to quantify the objectification of our senses, and it is just like a change of season, and it's going to go away. This sadness is not going to live with us forever. The happiness is not going to live with us forever. Like we have to tolerate sadness, we have to tolerate happiness as well. The time we learn how to tolerate happiness and be humble, and then agamo paino nityas, and that is the appearing and disappearing, the manifestation and unmanifestation, the prakat and aprakat part of it. And that is the example about the flame and the river. And then we have to tolerate titiksa. So with that, I'd like to end here. Want to hear some of your reflection about this verse, a very powerful verse where Krishna is connecting from soul to body to prakriti, which is the material world. So this is the nucleus of Bhagavad Gita. These three verses, 2.12, 2.13, 2.14, if we have understood, we have understood a lot. The only thing which we haven't is the karma and Ishvara, and to some degree here Krishna is touching upon the karma aspect, but the jiva, prakriti and kala, the time, the three aspects out of the five is explained here. So this is a very tightly coupled triplet verse where Krishna is transcending and so sweetly explaining about soul, body, and how the body is changing, and then and the pain aspect of it. And that is the reason why, instead of tolerating, instead of making us enduringly strong, nowadays there is a lot of activity in pain management. And that is where they give you the technique where they can control the pain, but actually uh, enduring the pain makes us stronger, and we come out brighter, stronger. And that is exactly what Krishna is saying. So there is no magic wand which can give us happiness all the time. It's part and parcel of our life. The way we take the happiness and sadness determines our future, not the happiness and sadness, trying to get rid of happiness and sadness. So that is essentially what this verse is about. And there is a lot of details Krishna is explaining here. So with that, I'll end here. Want to hear